So, is geek entertainment and entertainment in general about ready to be cast directly into the wastelands again? Possibly. Well, we're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of the Geek Watch Podcast.
This is the Geek Watch Podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 185 of the Geek Watch Podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
And so we took a little bit of a break, and we're back. And
of course, no fault of our own.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely none.
Yeah, life is all that stuff that happens while you're making other plans. And, of course, I know your favorite part of coming to the studio is we get to have a nice conversation and a chat and get our energy up. And then I hit record and the storm clouds just roll in. But we're not going to start with that.
Not going to start with the bad news? Okay.
We're not going to start with the bad news. We're going to start with some good news because it's not all bad news, I hope. But we have been seeing a bunch of trailers that have been coming out and a lot of excitement to be had. Mm-hmm. And they just released a trailer for the new Godzilla King Kong movie.
How was that?
It's just a teaser. Mm-hmm. Apparently, there's something meaner than the two of them. So,
Mothra?
No. It looks like...
Gamera?
It looks like another simian, but it's like a red-faced simian. And they pull back to all these dead kaiju, and it looks like King Kong.
Mighty Joe Young. I don't know.
Yeah. So apparently there's a bigger, badder Kong out there, and it's called The New Kingdom, I believe, or something like that. And again, it's just a little bit of a tease, which is enough to make you go, oh, we're going to get some of that. That looks interesting. I really enjoyed the first one, especially because I got to sit at home and watch it for free. And we are definitely going to be talking about streaming later on because, again, you got to have your bad news, and we're going to definitely talk about some bad news on that front. But in the meantime, like I said, we got to see that trailer. And, of course, they've released the final trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy, which comes out in 2 weeks, which I have not watched because I know what happens to these final trailers. They
spoil the whole movie.
They spoil, or at least enough that I didn't want to know.
Mm-hmm.
So I did see that Sylvester Stallone, a.k.a. Starhawk, makes an appearance in the trailer, so we're going to get to see him again.
Okay.
And perhaps other parts of his Ravager team. Mm-hmm. But that's all I know because I said I am not watching this. Now, for everybody that were saying, well, it's great this movie's coming out, but obviously James Gunn isn't going to be promoting it because he's with DC now, and so they're not going to let him do any kind of press for it. Well, of course, he's doing all this press for it. He's doing the complete. He's doing the press tour. Uh-huh. And anybody who's worried that just because he's with DC now, he wasn't going to be able to promote this movie, of course, he's going to promote the movie because it's his movie.
That's not like you can't. It's just another job. They're freelancers. They can do what they want.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it, too, is that obviously he wasn't going to sign any contract with DC without having it stated, look, I'm going to promote this movie. Mm-hmm. And obviously he wasn't completely cutting his ties. He had that one last movie, and of course he wanted to promote it, as you can imagine he would want to, and so he's doing that right now. He did happen to mention that he finished writing his draft of the new Superman movie. Okay. That's been announced.
All right.
And there's been a lot of announcements about writing, and we'll talk about a few more of those, but I did want to bring up, I did see the teaser trailer for the new Penguin series on Max. No longer HBO Max, just Max. Just Max. Saw that one, and of course, we saw the Marvels, which, of course, it brought out a certain element, as it tends to do, because golly, it was bad enough when it was one female lead, now it's three. So, of course, we got to get all butthurt about that. But I'm definitely interested in it. It certainly feels like it's going to carry a lot of that tone that we got out of Miss Marvel.
Yes.
Which I enjoyed the heck out of, so I'm going to enjoy that. So we got that to look forward to. And also, on the scary side of things, a trailer called The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Now, did you know about this?
Oh, I think I read something about it. I know I haven't seen it, but it has some. Is it Dracula?
Yes.
Is it okay?
So it's what happened on the ship.
Maybe this will get the bad taste of BBC out of my mouth for a good Dracula story.
What I like about it is as far as Dracula, it's more like Nosferatu.
Okay.
So it's more like of a monster type of thing, which I like that.
Yep.
But I like this ensemble cast, and it really does look pretty interesting. So
Okay.
I'm definitely interested in that. So I'm looking forward to that. And I haven't had a chance to see Renfield yet, but I've been hearing some good things about it. And Nicolas Cage was busy Nicolas Caging all through it. And I definitely want to see that. And I'm still debating on whether I want to see the Evil Dead movie because the amount of blood they said they used, the hundreds of liters of blood that they've used in this. I love a good gore fest, but the thing is, I do want a little meat on the bone there, shall we say. So I hope it's a good story. I'm not really interested in just watching people get hacked up and torn to pieces.
Right.
And there's not really a whole lot of story there, but I guess we'll find out.
Now, I did see something that I thought might interest you. It wasn't a trailer or anything, and I don't know if these are leaked or if someone put them out to promote them, but there were pictures from Wicked. And
I saw that.
You did, yeah. And I immediately thought, oh, they put these out there for the cosplayers so they can go ahead and start on their costumes. We got a good look at Glinda.
Right.
And I think that I love the blue dress from Broadway. And I think that they're trying to giving her a pink dress, trying to get the old school people who only know Wizard of Oz.
Right.
And that Glinda, to remind you, this is that Glinda. So they put her in pink. I think I favor the blue dress, but it's not so bad. And we only get Elphaba from like far away. We really can't get a good look at what she's wearing or what her character design's going to be. I'm excited to see.
Well, it definitely looks, especially with that backdrop, we know I don't know if you've ever seen Wicked.
No, I've read the book.
Yeah. So the fact that we're getting the pink dress and we're getting Elphaba in the hat and the cloak, obviously, and especially because she's in the clock tower. That's a scene out of it. So there's a certain thing that happens in the musical. Something really horrible happens. And that's when Galinda,
yes.
Galinda
the proper pronunciation.
Yeah. Galinda goes to being Glinda, and she goes from the blue dress to the pink one.
Oh, okay. See, I've only seen that classic Christian Chenoweth blue petaled dress. I didn't know there was a pink one.
Yeah, she goes pink, but the thing about it is the incident is capped off, obviously, with the one song everybody remembers from Fine Gravity.
Yes.
That's how it ends, and that scene, that song and that scene happens in the clock tower, and that's what you're seeing Elphaba in the clock tower. So they're basically...
So in the book, it's the clock of the time dragon. Is that what...
Yes.
It is? Okay, all right.
As a matter of fact, if you ever see it live, if you ever see it live, there is a large mechanical dragon.
Yes.
The clock dragon is above the stage.
Okay, because in the book, it's a puppet show, and Elphaba was born in the clock of the time dragon.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't make a reference that she was born in it, but the thing does move. And, of course, the curtain itself is the map of Oz. But the time dragon, it's like this big animatronic that hangs right above the stage.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And there have been a couple times where I have seen the production where I literally sat underneath the dragon. I was in the front row and I was right underneath the dragon. And it's a great musical. It's a lot of fun. There's some heartbreak in it. I've gone with some people and tissues were handed out for sure. I have a lot of hopes for it, and I hope it does really well. I hope that it gets treatment that it deserves. I love the fact that Michelle Yeoh is going to be Madame Morrible. That's going to be incredible. Yes. And the fact, and let's honestly, who they got for the wizard? Jeff Goldblum.
I know that. I don't know if I knew that or not, but whew.
I'm just waiting for him. He's perfect. He's going to be perfect for that role. I think Joel Grey was amazing in the original run, but
he's amazing in everything. So I mean, he's Joel Grey.
Yeah,
he's great in the Muppets. He was great. Yeah. He was great in Dallas. Everyone remembers him from his 2 episodes in Dallas.
Yeah, absolutely. That was amazing. But before I I dive into the misery of what's coming
Oh,
next,
no.
I do have to say one thing that I was really excited about is that Neil Gaiman has announced that all the scripts for Sandman Season 2 are done.
Yay!
So they're done, and so it's going into pre-production, which is great, and in the nick of time, because now we've got to dip our toe in the misery. And this is the misery. So the issue is, for the last few weeks now, the Writers Guild of America and the Association of Motion Picture and Television Producers, they've been going back and forth because the Writers Guild contract that they have is getting ready to expire. So now you start to get into a lot of contract negotiations. And the issues that the WGA is having is that they're now in a different world than when they signed the last contract, specifically streaming.
Yeah.
Because the model that they've been going by for a while now has been like a cable television, network television model.
Season by season, episode by episode.
Kind of like that, but also, let me ask you, how much do you know about how screenwriters get paid?
Nothing.
Okay.
Not a thing.
We'll give you a brief overrun. So normally what happens is a screenwriter, they write a script, there is an agreed upon fee that they get for it, a one-time fee. And so they get paid. The negotiated amount is they get paid for it. Now, when the show airs again, if they rebroadcast it, the screenwriter gets paid half of what the original payment was.
Okay.
So if it was $100,000, it'll be $50,000.
Okay.
If it gets aired again, now we're talking $25,000. Because it halves.
A half-life.
Yeah, it's like a half-life.
Like an element.
Yeah, if you've ever wondered when a screenwriter gets a check for 22 cents and you're like, why are they getting a check for 22 cents?
Because Nickelodeon just showed the one episode they wrote of MASH in 1983.
Exactly. It's like
Okay.
da. So
All right.
eventually it's a fraction of a cent, and so it takes a while for them to make it worth getting a check cut. But that's why you see these little like 22 cent, 10 cent,
Wow.
4 cent checks that come in. Now, the issue is in streaming, it doesn't work like that. You just put it up once and people just watch it.
Right.
So there's not like an air date. So they'll get their first payment, and you would think that somebody who writes an episode of a streaming show that gets like a lot of views,
Yep.
like that they should probably get paid more than somebody who, an episode that maybe got a few hundred views and got yanked or whatever, but that's not how it works. And the problem is, of course, that like a lot of other places, to be honest, the middle-class writer is getting squeezed out because of things like that, and also this thing that started to develop in streaming, which is known as the mini writer's room. Now, a writer's room, you have your showrunner who's your head writer, and then you got this writer's room full of people, and you just brainstorm and you give out assignments to write scripts, and you build an episode, and it goes through the full course of a season of a show. You build all of this. And so what they've been doing is they've been doing these mini writers' rooms where they get small groups of people for just like 2 or 3 weeks to brainstorm. Then they basically get rid of them, and then it's up to the showrunner to basically put all of it together. So there's not weeks and months of a writer's room. They're just brought in for a little bit, and then they're sent home. And so they don't make nearly any money doing that. And so that structure happens. And so that's been cutting basically into writers, the amount of money they can make. And so for your middle-of-the-road writer, your middle-class writer, they're getting squeezed out of the business because they're not making nearly any kind of money at all. Certainly not a living wage. Now, Hollywood and the motion picture and television producers, if you ask them, they will tell you that of all the processes in Hollywood, the screenwriter and the script are far and away the least important of all of this stuff. They will tell you that for a fact. Now, you're laughing about that because you're probably thinking, wait a minute.
Yeah, where's our story come from? What does our world look like? What?
Right. And as a writer, I tend to agree with you. But this is their view on this. The screenplay is just there to get the ball rolling. It has no intrinsic value in and of itself. A script isn't really valuable until you get a producer or a group of producers who are willing to make this movie. They've read the script and they're like, well, we can make a movie out of this. And then you get a cast and a crew together. You get a director and the producers, and maybe you have a star. They read the script and they're like, we don't like this part of it. So you send it back to the screenwriter to rewrite, or you get another screenwriter to rewrite it. And then you're continually rewriting it. And then you start to shoot it. Some of the scenes you decide you're not going to shoot. Some scenes you do shoot, but they don't work. So you cut them out. And the director is putting his or her vision onto this script. And so they make changes. Sometimes actors will change lines and they decide to keep it. So obviously the movie's the important part of it. Once it's made into a movie and you can put it on streaming or you can put it in a theater, then it becomes valuable. And only then does it become valuable. But the script itself, and especially the idea of shooting a script exactly the way that you get it.
You're right.
The writer's vision, not important. The movie's the important part. Mm-hmm. But the script itself gets the ball rolling. It gives you a template if you're interested in following it, to whatever degree you're interested in following it. But the script itself's not worth anything. And the proof of that is if you write a script and nobody wants to make it into a movie, how much money can you get for it? Zero. And so that is their view on it. So again, as a writer, I don't agree with that. Now, I do also understand that as a writer, if you're writing screenplays, there is going to be a lot of that give and take, and there's going to be that issue. And a lot of writers who came from short stories and novels, that's a hurdle that's very difficult to overcome for them very often, because when you're writing a novel, you only answer to yourself. You can put anything you want in it, and plus you have an unlimited FX budget because you can write anything.
Right.
So if you want to be a screenwriter, that idea of being able to collaborate and make changes and all that stuff, you got to really be down with that. Mm-hmm. But because of the nature of all that, and because streaming has become such a big deal, and streaming, of course, was getting a bunch of studios sued. We've talked about that. So now the writers are going, look, you guys are making tons of money off of this, off of our scripts, and we're not seeing nearly anything out of it. And streaming has changed the game, and you're going to have to start to pay us a little more fairly. And the motion picture and television producers were like, no, we don't want to do that.
No, do you remember last time that happened? We got
2007, 2008.
like lost.
Yeah, we got 2000. It was the writer's strike of 2007/2008. It lasted for 100 days. I don't know if you wouldn't remember that because you weren't born yet. But youngsters.
Right. I recall Lost and Heroes like getting the bad end of that.
And plus the fact that Los Angeles, in business, they lost, I guess in today's money, they were saying $3 to $4 billion. And I read a Vulture article that said that one of the side effects of the writer's strike was that because you didn't have writers to write episodic television, you had to lean toward reality television.
Oh.
Which was why we got The Apprentice for as long as we did, and probably a president out of it, however you feel about that. But I've been following this possibility for writer's strike because the contract runs out May the 1st. And if there's not an agreement on the table, they're going on strike.
Again. Well.
They're going on strike again. And yeah, we still have a couple of weeks. They could come up with something. But from what I've been reading and what I've been seeing in the news, basically what both sides have been doing is they've been showing up and reading canned speeches from papers. So they're not listening to each other. They're just speechifying at each other. So the odds that they're actually going to come up with some kind of an agreement is 0 to none, unless something changes and they stop speechifying to each other and reading these canned, pre-prepared speeches that the other side isn't obviously not going to listen to. then nothing's going to happen. And
Right.
I'm just getting this feeling that they've already decided this strike is going to happen, and they're going to see who's going to be able to hold out.
Oh, looking so forward to more reality television. A couple of Richard Bachman books. I recently found out there was a reality competition show in a different country that was a terminally ill woman was going to donate her kidney to a contestant on this. And I was like, I've read those Stephen King books.
Yeah.
What? I couldn't believe that was real. But it was. That was real.
The sad part is I'm at the age now where I completely believe that was real. Unfortunately. But that might be what we're now. The 2007-2008 strike, there was some interesting and good things that came out of it, especially if you were an independent creator. It opened up a lot for you. The strike is how we got Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog.
Right.
There can be some good things to come out of this, especially if writers eventually are able to get a living wage out of actually writing. That would be awesome. What's made this even worse, honestly, is that what we are dealing with now that they weren't dealing with 2007, 2008 was, well, we're just now getting out of COVID. Remember COVID? I remember COVID. We all damn well remember COVID.
Yeah, it was just like December. You remember December? It was in December.
Yeah. And people are still catching COVID. We've got to some level of kind of normalcy, and theaters are starting to recover. But if things start to grind to a halt, and of course, when the writer's strike hits, the first thing that's going to be hit is late night television and shows like Saturday Night Live that are constantly writing. Okay, that'll be the first to go. And then television shows that they have fall seasons, they do their writing during the summer. They're not going to have their writing staff. So all of the fall TV that hasn't been shot, well, which is pretty much all of it, all of that's going to come to a screeching halt. If it's not already shot now, if they're going into the writer's room by May, that's it. If they're not pretty much written and done by the end of this month, it's not going to get done until the strike's over. And that also includes television. Scripts that are already been written, like, thank goodness, Sandman.
Right.
Season 2. Thank goodness for that.
Yep. Reachers in production.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good TV this year, and yeah, that's.
But if we get another 100-day, 150-day, especially if, like I said, if the motion picture and television producers, they decide they want to be real stubborn about it, it's going to be a while. We could get another 100-day or maybe 200 days. And the thing about it is, again, Los Angeles, they're in a worse shape now than they were back in 2007 because we've gone through COVID. Plus, we've had the great exodus. People are leaving California in droves because of taxes and other reasons.
Yeah, and Georgia has become the new Hollywood in the past decade or so.
Yeah.
There's so much filming going on there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, of course, that's going to come to a screeching halt as well. But California is real. At Los Angeles, I don't know if they survive a 100-day strike. I don't know how they do it because their situation right now is really dire. They're getting to a point now where I haven't looked at the numbers, but it feels the number of homeless in Los Angeles is starting to compare to the actual population in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And there isn't a underpass or an abandoned building in all of Los Angeles that doesn't have dozens to hundreds of people.
Hooverville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they deal with it, but it's just, and theaters were getting to a place where they were starting to recover and television was coming back, and we have a long strike. If there's stuff that you haven't had a chance to watch yet, you're going to have time to catch up on it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the other thing, too, is that streaming is what's really leading on to this. And a lot of streaming services are like, we've got stuff in the can we've just been holding on to. So they can hold out for a while. They have plenty of content. And plus, their content they already have out there is evergreen. If you haven't watched Wednesday yet, you can watch it now. And it's not going anywhere. And so they have that ability. They can hold out.
Right.
And writers, they're stuck. They can't go back to the way things were because they're not making enough money to live on. So they don't have a choice. So this could go on for a while. And it'll be interesting to see what we have to talk about if nothing's happening. We'll
do some retro reviews of let's watch The Thing and then The Thing from Outer Space and compare.
Yeah, we may be going there. But but the thing is, that's why you're seeing all this neat stuff that's coming out. All the stuff we've been seeing for Doctor Who, the costumes. Did you see Shooty got was 50s costume?
No. Ooh.
Yeah, so
I saw him as Ken.
Yeah. So him and the companion, they're dressed very 50s. And he's got the big afro. So it's pretty solid. And we saw a villain's costume. And that was released yesterday, I believe. Yesterday or today. I mean, there's a lot of hype going on for stuff that's coming out. Right behind it is this wave of possibly not a damn thing. Like I said, maybe somebody will be like, we can't let this happen. And they'll actually get to talking to each other, but they only got 2 weeks to do it.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll find out. But I'm not leaving this show on a negative note. We're not. This is not how we're ending it.
Good.
So what I do want to do before we go is you have seen Dungeons and Dragons.
I have Honor Among Thieves.
And I want to talk to you about it. And I want to go, and we can spoiler this time because you've seen it.
We can spoiler
So
this.
if you haven't seen it yet, guys,
go see it.
Go
you
see
should
it.
have seen it by now.
Put it on pause and then come back and talk about it. What did you think? Tell me how that.
Of course I loved it. And my rose-colored geek glasses wouldn't let me not like this movie. Everything. And I was... we walk into the movie theater and we're talking and we're loud and I'm like,
it was you and your D&D group, right?
Yes, and I said, we need to be quiet. You're embarrassing me in front of the other nerds. And I was cheering when I would see the gelatinous cube and I throw my arms up in the air, gelatinous cube and things along those lines, and just ridiculousness of how much I enjoyed this movie. Now, when you watched it, did they have that cute little bumper at the beginning of all the actors telling you thank you for going to the movie theaters and eating the popcorn that for some reason tastes better than popcorn? I loved that. That was adorable.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
And I saw you were talking about a cameo, and when I saw him, I was like, oh, this is what Brian was talking about. You were talking about Bradley Cooper, weren't you? Yes. That was adorable.
Oh, yeah. Cute little fella.
Cute little halfling. Just adorable. And cute little scene and heart-wrenching. Yeah,
exactly.
There was such good heart-wrenching. And I do know the Deus Ex Machina that you're talking about that upset you, and I get as a writer that it upset you, but I understood that if we have a group of people sitting around a table and one of their party dies, that they are absolutely going to do everything they can to bring them back. They're going to Deus Ex Machina that. They're going to do death saves and get her back. So I could see it happen. I see why they did it. Storytelling-wise, no, it wasn't the best.
But it's definitely something that would happen around the table.
Yes, it absolutely would. So as far as the spirit of Dungeons & Dragons goes, this was spot on, right on the money.
Now, since we were talking spoilers, I did mention in my review that the first scene felt more like anything D&D than anything. And the whole, let's see if we can get a parole. The whole parole thing. And of course, why to me that was quintessential D&D is obviously the Dungeon Master had planned to let them go, but they had other plans.
Your pardon was granted. It was fantastic. And
exactly. And that, I can't tell you how many times as a Dungeon Master, I've had something like that set up just to have the party just screw it up.
Yep.
It's like, I was going to let you out because obviously you can't keep them in jail because you got to keep the story going.
The key was under the mat the whole time. You didn't have to cast Fireball.
Or there was a game we were running. There was a way to get down into the basement without tearing an entire wall down, but you had to
We had to tear the entire wall down. Yeah.
Exactly. There was an easier way of getting down there.
We've got our own little tiefling with an axe, and she can't handle.
Yeah, I'm not patient.
No puzzles. She is Munchkin. She's kicking a door.
She's kicking in a door and go for the treasure.
Kicking a door and go for the treasure.
Yeah.
Oh, and the mimic. Perfect mimic.
Oh, for sure.
And all of us D&D geeks loved it, and people who don't understand Dungeons & Dragons, they can still enjoy this movie. The effects, the makeup.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. And I was very pleased. if you can't tell.
Oh, yeah. I had to say, I love the dragon because it was an atypical dragon. He was so chunky.
Chunky.
He was so chunky.
Oh,
Chunky
and he
dragon.
can't fit nowhere. Oh, love him. And I can't wait for those toys to come out.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I loved the references. There was a lot of D&D references. And there was, and now that you've seen it, you can tell. There were places where you're like, oh, they rolled a 1.
Absolutely. And Chris Pine, like, never really fighting, being the perfect bard and just throwing stuff around and tricking people and getting out of the way. The perfect bard, and even though they had him, and he is a very physical actor, and he could absolutely be an action star, and they're like, no, we're going to put you on as the real bard and make you do your charisma roles and performances. And
oh, yeah.
And that was great. And, of course, Michelle Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Never not good.
With her being a barbarian, why would you ever need to get into a fight?
Mm-hmm,
You know, she's the party tank. She's the grenade. You pull the pin and throw her in the middle of the mess.
Yep.
But, yeah, there's all these wonderful moments, like when they put the portal on the painting.
Oh, my goodness, that was brilliant.
It was, but then they rolled the 1 and it landed flat on the ground, so they couldn't get...
You know, exactly.
It's
and
like,
that's something a D&D group would actually do it. And they'd be sitting here and they say, can we put the portal on the painting and then put the painting in the... I know we've done that in
oh, yeah.
in
and
games.
Then scrambling to come up with a solution. So, well, wait a minute. If I can maybe... Can I take my knife and cut a little bit of the frame away and then become a worm and crawl? Can I do that?
Roll your sleight of hand. Roll your...
Yeah.
Yes, it's great.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of those references. It's like there's this tone when you play Dungeons and Dragons where there's a lot of serious stuff, but there's this humor that pervades pretty much every table. There's those moments where something screwy happens, somebody rolls a 1, and you're just laughing because it's so ridiculous. While the DM is trying to scramble and figure out, okay, how bad do I make this situation? But then those moments where they roll the 20s.
Yep.
And they're definitely in that movie also.
A terrible wizard until I'm not.
Exactly. And so there was a lot of those great moments. And you even had the temporary player who... They don't get to play every session, so they play one session and then they leave.
Then they leave, yes.
And you had a character who did that. And he was a paladin. It's like that. Paladins don't play every game. They just don't. For the most part. You might have
stars, yeah.
Yeah, Paladin's guest star. That's the character. When you have somebody who's a temporary, you have them play a paladin because they're not going to screw things up too badly. They'll be useful to the party, but they're not going to be inclined to do anything that's going to screw up anything while the next week they're not even there. Again, you could tell that the screenwriters knew D&D, that they loved it, that it was all over this. And if you've ever played D&D, you're like, that's familiar. That's totally familiar. But so I'm assuming that you and your gang liked it?
Yes. Yes, we did.
So I figured you guys definitely would. It was everything that I wanted it to be. You know, it wasn't Shakespeare, but it didn't need to be. It was exactly what I wanted. We got Chunky Dragon. We got an acid. We got an acid dragon. We got like I said, we got a displacer beast, which that's a deep cut. This was straight out of the first edition Monster Man. Yeah, like I said, it references to Baldur's Gate. There was like a lot of just really great things in that movie. And again, as somebody who plays D&D, both of us or play D&D, there was definitely a lot there that was just like, yep, that's how it is. And it was, again, it was the closest you were going to get to sitting around the table and playing, is putting that story. So I absolutely loved it. But as much as I enjoyed that, and we got some good things around the corner, in 2 weeks we're going to have Guardians of the Galaxy 3, so we'll laugh and cry at that.
Definitely.
Yeah, but after all of that, and after May 1st, I don't know what else we get, but I guess we'll find out.
We shall see.
And with that said, we come to the end of episode 185. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media.
For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.